Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today, my guest is Melton Mustafa. He's an accomplished arranger, composer, producer, educator, and entrepreneur, and he has taken his talent as a trumpeter extraordinaire around the world. I want to welcome to our show Melton Mustafa.
Yes, good. I think I would say morning or afternoon, Susan Brender. It's a pleasure to be on your show today.
I'm delighted that you're on my show. So, Melton, you've composed, produced, and performed many classical original compositions, including your original musical drama, Shalom, Salam, Serene, for symphonic orchestras, for dance, vocals, and playwright. Tell our audience about that.
Well, that is a musical that I wrote, I don't know, maybe about 14 years ago. It's called Shalom, Salam, Serene. And it was about, it's a wonderful musical, family musical, and it depicts the concept of believers in the Jewish faith and the Christian faith and the Islamic Muslim faith, how they are so significant and important, saying basically the same thing in terms of how people develop from one state of mind to another. And it's wonderful. It's a wonderful family show, and it opens up the eyes to people who want to see, understand the progression of human development from one state of mind to a more sophisticated spiritual state of mind.
Mm-hmm. So, interestingly enough, there are many problems going on with regard to the safety and a warlike atmosphere between people in, of course, the Middle East. And so, but when it comes to music, isn't it interesting that everybody becomes friends?
Well, music, really basically transcends all of this, and it brings people to a self-realized state. I believe that the music helps in a way that it grows. It helps you to understand the rational part of thinking as well as the highest realm of how we develop. This is what the musical is all about, because everybody has problems in terms of, when they're growing from a young age. They first come into the world very innocently, and because of the influence of the world, things around them, they go either this way or that way. I believe that since everybody, was didn't have a race when they were first born. They didn't have a religion when they were first born.
Right.
They didn't have any names that they can associate with until later on in their life. And so, the circumstances and the environment and things kind of like guided a person into whatever direction they were going into. The music itself, culturally speaking and environmentally speaking, has a lot to do with how people, I believe, how people adjust in the society and how they relate in the society. As a musician, I've played many different styles of music, and I've grown to understand people actually through their music, whether it's classical music, Latin music, jazz, pop, R&B, you name it. And I've become aware of, the way people, how the music actually moves them, and the fact that how music, the role music plays in soothing, there's a term called music soothes the common, beast, So music is it's a universal, it's a universal part of life, and you can't get around it because it's in every human person. So how it develops in a person depends on, as I said before, their environment, their culture, etc.
Yeah. And so your music has been part of a documentary entitled Tom Dowd and the Language of Music, and you had it directed and produced by Mark Morman. It must be a wonderful documentary. And again, tell our audience how you got involved in producing and directing and playing the music for documentaries, for movies, and other things.
Well, I've always been interested in writing. I'm a composer, arranger composer, and I've always been interested in writing for various genres of music, and including music and theater and documentary, you name it, And it's just one of my things that I love to do, and I like to pass that on, whatever experience that I have in that. I like to also pass it on. But as far as getting involved in anything like that, circumstances, who et cetera, kind of like push you in those positions.
Yeah. And you also have done a lot of traveling and recordings and tours with the Count Basie Orchestra?
That's correct, yes, I have. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's pretty special, don't you think?
It absolutely is. I was fortunate to join the band in one way, and in another way I wasn't fortunate, because I joined the band a year after Basie passed, and I spent about 8 years with the band. So I didn't actually get a chance to play with Basie himself, but I worked with the orchestra for 8 years, and that was a heck of an experience. It was a great, wonderful experience. I learned a lot while I was with the band. And I got a chance to play with some of the original people that actually played with the Basie band also. Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting because I actually saw Count Basie just before he died at a theater in New Jersey, and he was one of the greatest. And I think the community of jazz musicians must really miss him.
Yeah, for sure. Well, he's an institution, it never go away. That style of music is here, and it continues to be here, supported by very number of educational centers, colleges, universities, high schools, and it carries on. It's something that this institution will continue on, I believe.
Now, let me just mention that you also have an orchestra, and this orchestra is in the Basie tradition, and it's known to be rooted in swing and blues, also in bebop and African-Cuban flavors. So if you were to let our audience know what that's about, it would be really wonderful.
Yes, my orchestra was established, I don't know, maybe about 20 years ago, and it's an 18-piece orchestra. Most of my music is original big band compositions that I've written over the years, but I've done also, but arrangements of published material, popular things for dances and things of that nature. Because the band not only did concerts, but we also played for weddings, bar mitzvahs, and things of that nature. We played in clubs. So it was a selection of musicians, some of whom are still working with me for many years. This music that I play, it's something special because, and I tried not to be like the Basie band or the Count or the Duke Ellington band or the whatever band, but there are times where, when you're playing a particular gig, it may require that you do that particular style of music. So in that sense, that's what my band is about. It's about originality.
Well, you've also performed with many big names, including Nancy Wilson, Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, and Joe Williams. That's just to name a few. But wow, that must have been amazing. Yes,
while playing with, I was a sideman with the Peter Graves Orchestra. Peter Graves was a contractor here in South Florida. And I started off my career, really being honed into, what I am now, to being one of the best musicians because of my experience with the Peter Graves Orchestra. And in that band, we did play for just about every top name that you can name. Tony Bennett, Frank Sinatra, Nancy Wilson, Johnny Mathis, you name it. And it went on, and it was quite an experience. I mean, the average person was say, "Wow, man, this is exciting." But at that time, it didn't mean a whole lot to me. I enjoyed doing it, but I was doing a job,
Yeah. Yes, we're all basically the same, aren't we? Even if you make it to the top, there's still people, and they have their issues too. So, Melton, you're a gifted music educator, and you began instructing young people at the African Heritage Cultural Arts Center in Miami. Now, we have a problem in our schools, and the problem is that they're eliminating all the arts, and that is horrible. But you see that at your university, you're actually there teaching so many students. What made you want to do that?
Okay, now you mentioned the African American Heritage Culture Center, which is in Liberty City in Miami, Florida. I started teaching young children there from the age of 5 years old and up, and it was something special to me to see these young people start and then eventually grow into, musicians that you respect in the world. Some of them whom are doing well in places like New York or Chicago, etc. But that wasn't enough for me. I had to go to a higher level, Florida Memorial University, where I'm the director of jazz studies at Florida Memorial University. We started a program. I've been there for the past 18 years, and we also started a jazz festival in my name, Melton Mustafa Jazz Festival, and the 18th annual one is coming up. Is it the 19th? So many. So what we do is we involve the students in this jazz program, an educational component that supports, the music that we are so, that is such a part of our heritage. And the program at Florida Memorial University is one that we kind of approach our program from a non-traditional, a way in which, meaning that we have a lot of students that come in and really they don't really know how to read music, and don't understand the theory behind it, but they could play, they could sing, they could play, and it's amazing. So we kind of like hone these young musicians to understand what they're already doing, so that they can move forward and position themselves in the world in a real way, so they can be in demand.
Mm-hmm. And Melton, what satisfies you most as a music educator?
Working with students. One is working with students and seeing them understand the information that I'm giving you, and I learn from it also. So it makes me feel really good to be able to teach and learn at the same time. I guess what makes me feel good about music also is that I love to hear the music that I write being played by others. The big band music, the small band music, and to be able to do something. Now, I remember when I first wrote my first composition, I was in high school, and I had it played, and it made me immediately say, hey, this is what I want to do. Because I heard the music, I said, wow, this is what I wrote, and this is what it sounded like. And I didn't really know what it was going to sound like until the band started playing it. I was in high school. So it really boosts my drive to continue on in this area of composition, arranging and composition. But those are the two things that kind of really moves me in when I'm working in the music field, working with students, learning from them, and having my music played, etc.
Melton, you run a nonprofit organization called MSM Arts Incorporated, which you started in 2005 to help young, talented youths. And it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, and you award scholarships. So, tell our audience how, if they are interested in applying for a scholarship, what they have to do.
Well, they can go to my internet site. It's www.msmartsinc.org, and they can get information about that nonprofit organization that I'm over, and their applications for scholarships and things of that nature. We co-sponsors the Jazz Festival, and we also issue scholarships. We also just recently instituted an endowment, music scholarship endowment at Florida Memorial University. That should be available coming up in the very near future. So the organization, MSM Arts, is one that is more like us. We serve the community, whether it's for the youth, young, the elderly, or anyone who's, in need of things that they are not normally able to get because of their financial situations.
Yes. So today I'm talking to Melton Mustafa, who has performed with some of the biggest names. He's a musician, a composer. He's done so many things in the arts. So let's change gears for just a minute. You were a musician in the military, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I spent 3 years in the military. I started off at Fort McPherson, 3rd Armored in Atlanta, Georgia. I was a year and a half there, and also I was over in Germany, Frankfurt, Germany, for a year and a half. So that experience was wonderful. I was a musician for the whole entire time I was there, meeting some of the greatest musicians, being able to understand a lot of my skills. I kind of honed it there also, but that was a wonderful experience being in the military, yes.
And tell me about the kind of music that you wrote, and is there a message behind it?
Yes. Every composition, I would say 99% of the compositions that I write, there is a message in it. There's a message in it, and the styles vary too, from jazz to bebop to, classical, and many of them will have lyrics to them to help clarify or understand what the mood of the music is all about. Because when the music is written, the style, the rhythm, and all of that, the kind of chord changes that are used, they have an effect on the human psyche, I believe, and putting words to them enforces or reinforces the idea of what I'm trying to deliver in the music. So it means very much. It's not just something that's put together and thrown together and say, oh, okay, it's not a Picasso type thing.
Now, I always tell my audience that music has a way of transforming people in ways they can't even think of. Is that what you feel too? Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That, I call it subliminal seduction. People are not aware that they are being influenced through their subconscious, and music is one that would do the same thing. The rhythm, the melody, the harmony, and I've experienced this, and I see it every day, this music is a powerful tool to be used if used properly, when used properly.
So when you say when used properly, now let's talk about that. Do you mean that some of the lyrics and some of the music, for example, which is rap or hip hop, can be very detrimental to some of the young people, can't it be?
Well, I would think so. Some of it is abusive, and some of it is a really good message. Some of it is very good messages in rap and all of the other the various styles, and then there's some that are abusive, as I was saying before, But my music is very positive and in this presentation, and encouraging people to be the best that they can be as a human person, to bring out the best what's already in them. And because, I don't think that people start off being evil. they learn to be evil.
Yeah. And so let's now talk about your instruments. Which one do you prefer playing? Because you play a lot of instruments, don't you?
Well, I mess around with I mess around with piano, I mess around with saxophone, I mess around with bass, but my principal instrument is trumpet. And I prefer, as far as my articulation and being able to express myself, I would prefer playing it on trumpet, because that's one more. It's just like another limb of my body. It's connected to me. But as far as what I like to listen to, I enjoy listening to, and wish I could play like some of these great pianists and great saxophonists.
Yeah. But you're pretty great yourself. So let's not try to say that you don't match up to some of those greats. But let's talk about something regarding your music too. What styles or persons influenced you the most as a funk and blues musician, jazz and Latin music? Who influenced you?
Let me start with R&B and funk. When I first started playing music, it was basically my brother that was teaching me in blues. He's one of the greatest influences to me to learn. For when I learned how to play the blues and understand it, it took me a while, but I got into it. So he was my brother is a saxophonist. His name is Jesse Jones Jr., and he's traveled all over the world and still doing it. We travel together, and he's also in my orchestra, and I play with him in his band from time to time. So we work together, and we laugh about it all the time, because when I'm on the stage, I always tell people that my brother is my first influence and the one that taught me how to play the blues, and many of the licks and things that I do actually comes from my brother. But as far as writing music is concerned, I have been influenced by, Latin music, because I played in Latin bands also, in salsa bands, etc., and in the concert classical type bands where there are, orchestral instruments involved, and of course, very heavily into jazz. That was my greatest influence in terms of what I really like to listen to and play, jazz, bebop, to be more exact.
Mm-hmm. Now, Melton, we talked about all this different music that you play, you listen to, but one of the things that I think is very interesting is the fact that you're teaching kids jazz, and jazz is not something you would think that young people are interested in, are they?
Well, jazz, many of the young people have been sampling what we call motifs, portions of some of the licks and things of jazz musicians, and they take parts and put it into their music, parts of jazz music, and put it in theirs. And a lot of times you don't know that you're being, the music is, you don't think it's in you, but it is in you. Jazz is just a way, I believe, of expressing your innermost feelings. And as I was saying earlier, that the influence or the culture that you're in, it kind of like directs you to what you want to be, because you have, in today's world, you have these traditions or things that, not traditions, but they are like fads, I would say, that, go from one point to another. After about 10 years, it goes to one thing and changes and keeps changing like that. As far as jazz being an influence of a part of the younger generation, I believe they're constantly trying to come up with new ideas, but they find out that they have to come right back to the original. It's almost like a cycle. Mm-hmm. And when you want to be free in mind, to express yourself, you have to come back to jazz.
Yeah, that's true. So now, what do you have in store for you in the future?
Well, I'm, continuously writing and composing, and I don't like to stop writing or composing or playing my instrument. I don't like doing that. So my focus probably is going to be more in the realm of writing for more musicals, and having that produced, as well as I like to get, I like to do some movies if possible, and because those are the things that, people, that makes a movie happen. If the music is not a part of the scenes, it's almost like dead, So the music is something that I like to continue working with in those arenas, musicals. I want to do more commercials, and just write more, just write, continuously write. But the main thing I would like to do out of all of that is to finish a composition, a book that I'm writing, where I can help people, young people in college, to understand how to express themselves in composition as well as I can.
Well, Melton Mustafa, you've been a wonderful guest, and I want to thank you for being on the Susan Brender Show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so very much, Susan.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show.